Okay, so we are live now, which just in a different.
Oh boy.
Put. Oh yeah, it does definitely look like that one's live. But put the link to that in the Skype chat, and I'll see if I can see it in the browser.
Get shareable link.
Yeah.
And I will log on to the other video and post it in the chat.
Is someone going to make a spared no expense joke about this? Because I feel like that's necessary.
Save the quips for once people are hopping on and we're still figuring things out. Live chat is unavailable on this one. That's weird. Is it because it's for kids?
Well, it looks like everyone's headed straight over there. Looks like it's working.
Alright, now the chat for this one is not working. Is that correct?
I don't see a chat, no, but we are live, it looks like.
Okay. Well, we'll give people a little bit to do that. Chris and people at Makoshika State Park who are watching, if you could copy that link that I just sent here and shoot that out across all social media to try to circulate it, that would be great. I'm going to make sure that I have that copied and can send it to anyone who... Maybe, actually, we should see if we can change the description for the video that is now not working. Sorry about all of these issues, guys. We tried this a few weeks ago and it worked perfectly. But that's technology, I guess. Wait a minute, this is interesting. It uploaded all of the streams we did before. It just didn't stream them to the right place. That's funny. Okay, well, we have 57 people on here right now. Looks like... I'll see if I can get the chat up, but we may have to go without that.
Yeah, it says chat is disabled for content made for kids, so because it's...
Yeah, I'll see if I can... No, it's not made for kids. Save. That didn't create a chat, did it? I don't think so. Okay. Ugh. Could someone who is personally friends with me just like send me a text who is listening to this just so that I know for sure that it's working?
It looks like there's a box that just says xsplit/vcam. I don't know if that's supposed to be holding our faces in it.
That's supposed to have my face, which I think it will as soon as I turn my video off in Zoom.
Yeah, that seems to be the only issue now. That's working now too.
On the other hand, maybe it won't. I swear we tested all of this, guys. Okay, yep, sounds like... Oh wait, the chat works now?
Yeah, the
Okay,
chat works now.
I'm getting conflicting reports. Is the
You
chat...
need to refresh the chat, is why people aren't seeing it, probably.
Oh, look at that. Excellent.
On the other hand, it's a classic parable about, trying to use technology to entertain people with dinosaurs and everything going terribly wrong.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, well, I'm going to try one more time to... No, you know what? We're just going to keep this simple. People have waited long enough. I am sorry, everyone. I'm just going to go in here and... Video. Spotlight my video when I speak. Turn this on. Okay, so I should be showing up for people now. Huzzah. Hopefully. And we are just going to...
There you go.
get rid of that, yeah. Okay, if any of you guys know people who were going to come to this stream and were going to show up late or something, please text them this new link, because I am afraid that some people might try to use the other link and end up with the one that is not working. So if you have the ability to, please circulate that. Chris and anyone else listening from Makoshika State Park, if you could update the failed stream's description with this link in it, that might help direct people in the right to the right place. With that, let us begin our unfortunately quite delayed stream of Saurian for Makoshika State Park called Through the Eyes of a Dinosaur. My name is Ruby Hummel. I am a grad student at South Dakota School of Mines and Technology in paleontology. This is what I want to do with my life. And we are joined today by two developers for the game Saurian. We have the head researcher and game designer Tom Parker, and then Henry Meyers, a programmer. We are also joined by paleontologists Dr. John Scannella, the John R. Horner Curator of Paleontology at the Museum of the Rockies in Bozeman, Montana, and Dr. Holly Woodward, an associate professor at Oklahoma State University Center for Health Sciences. You guys want to say hi?
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
So what we're going to do today is play this game Saurian. And to do that, I think we'll start out by talking about what Saurian is. So first of all, the most important question of all, what are we going to name our Triceratops that we're going to play as?
Pokey.
What was the first letter in that? Was it Pokey or Hokey? Pokey?
Pokey.
Pokey. There we go. Pokey it is. Okay, so what is this game Saurian, Tom? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this is our game Saurian. Our goal with Saurian was to create sort of the most accurate representation of the Hell Creek ecosystem we possibly could as a survival game, a survival simulator game. So the idea is you play as a dinosaur, one of 4 to 6 species that you can choose from. You start your life as a hatchling and live in the environment and eat and drink to fill your needs, and hopefully grow to an adult.
So what is it that makes Saurian unique among dinosaur games then?
We believe it's our dedication to create the most accurate representation of the Cretaceous that we possibly could. So yeah, down to the last minute detail. Sort of the point of Saurian is more to be like a simulation of the Hell Creek ecosystem, more than anything else.
So here we are in this Hell Creek ecosystem. Thank you for that, Tom. What is the Hell Creek ecosystem, and what does it have to do with Makoshika State Park? Maybe you could answer that, John?
Sure. So the Hell Creek Formation is the geologic unit that represents the very end of the age of dinosaurs. So it's a body of rocks. Formation has to be big enough to be able to be mapped. So the Hell Creek Formation is found throughout Montana and the Dakotas. And it represents the last 1 to 2 million years of the Cretaceous period, the time of T-Rex and Triceratops. And as you go through the formation, through the rocks, you're actually going through the depositional environments that preserve the fossils of the creatures that live there. So Makoshika State Park is the largest state park in Montana, and it preserves a large part of the Hell Creek Formation. As you go through the Makoshika, you can see the various layers of rocks within the formation, which are layers of time that represent different environments of the Hell Creek. And so as you travel through the park, in a very real sense, you're traveling through time, the time of when the last dinosaurs lived in Montana.
So that's what we're looking at here. This is the environment that existed when that Hell Creek Formation, those rocks that make up that layer of rock, this is the ecosystem that existed when those rocks were deposited, and these are the animals that were living at that time. And Tom, the way you and Henry and others have designed this game is so that every single plant and animal in this game is actually present in the fossil record of the Hell Creek Formation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Every plant, every animal present in here is found in the Hell Creek Formation as fossils.
So, the star of Hell Creek is Triceratops. That's the most common dinosaur we have in the Hell Creek Formation. That's what we're playing as now. And we will have plenty to talk about with Triceratops. But first of all, I think we should name our herd members. How do you do that again, Henry?
So you press F to bring up your social menu, and that will tell you the status, location, etc. of your herd.
Okay, looks like there are 4 members.
Oh, perfect.
You guys, let's pull out those name suggestions. John, what you got? You've always wanted to name your own Triceratops.
I don't have anything good, Rudy. Can we call it Rupert?
Rupert. Okay. How do I have to hit enter? Okay, looks like Rupert is mom. Oh wait, maybe not. There's a bunch of adults. There's only one other hatchling. Okay, what should we name the other hatchling?
I'm going to volunteer Jacob for this one because Jacob is a member of our team who is a baby, and it is suitable for him to be the baby of the group.
All right, and how about this one? This is a male large adult. I've got Scale Butt, which I thought was fun. Maybe Scale Butt. How about this guy? Big female.
When I play Triceratops when testing, I normally call mine Brutus.
Brutus.
I think that works for a big adult.
All right, there we go. We all have names. So basically, now I just have to survive to adulthood as a baby Triceratops, and this world is full of all sorts of dangerous things. Let's go see if we can see something interesting. I can't get too far from my herd, or they will kick me out. But let's see if we can find some cool dinosaurs without that happening. What kinds of things might we expect to see in this? Oh, there's some. Holly, can you see those?
Where?
It's dead ahead. They're kind of camouflaged right now once I get through these horsetails. You want to
Yep,
tell us a little bit about those?
Sure, they're the cows of the Cretaceous. They look like might be some Edmontosaurus that we're coming up on.
Looks like it to me.
Yep. So
That's right.
more commonly called duck-billed dinosaurs. They're herbivorous. They've got these really long heads with flat beaks. They probably did travel in herds, and they're probably not going to be too aggressive to that little Triceratops.
Well, let's see.
Don't provoke them, Rudy.
I won't stab them. I'll get really carefully close, and if they get mad, I'll try to run away. But I
Don't
know.
get so close you get snipped on though.
I have had that happen. Yeah, they can accidentally step on you, but they don't look too mad about me. I love just how visually gorgeous this game is. Like, particularly the lighting. I think the lighting on different dinosaurs and these guys with their colorful heads is just really cool. I think that's one area where the development team has really nailed it.
Yeah, actually, there's a really cool methodology behind the color of these particular dinosaurs. It's very hard to find colors for these dinosaurs. There's some really cool stuff that goes into it, but for these ones in particular, we used a really neat method of inference, which I think Tom could probably explain better than I can.
Go for it, Tom.
Yeah. So for Edmontosaurus, we have a few great specimens that are normally called mummies that have sort of the soft tissue, the skin, wrapped around the fossil of the animal and preserved in the fossil record. So one of our old team members actually went down and had a look at one of these mummies and mapped out all the scale patterns from the skin of the fossil mummy, and we used those patterns to create the coloration on our Edmontosaurus model.
That's pretty cool. It turned out really well. I noticed some of them have really colorful heads and some of them do not. Holly, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about why that might be?
Yeah, sure. So with the majority of dinosaurs and duck-billed dinosaurs in particular, there's not much of a difference between sizes of the adults. So we think that maybe they differentiated between males and females more visually than based on size. Like a lot of mammals today, male and females based on size, really. But in dinosaurs, they were very visual. And so that has something to do with it. And they probably also changed color patterning as they got older.
So, very visual animals. What is the... tell me about this iconic Jurassic Park scene. The "if you hold still, it won't see you." Tell me about that.
Oh, well, I think that was Michael Crichton's introduction of frog DNA, I think it was, in the Tyrannosaurus genome, however that was possible. But dinosaurs were more visually based animals, like their relatives today, the birds and the crocodiles. They can see you if you don't. Crocodile's probably gonna want to eat you if you don't move. So that's probably not very accurate that they can't see you if you don't move.
I'm noticing some differences in the coloration between the different Triceratops too. John, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
About individual variation in colors between Triceratops?
Yeah.
Well, it's possible. We don't really know what color Triceratops was yet. So, and if you look at groups of animals today, there's going to be some variation between individuals. So I think it's possible that you'd probably be able to tell Triceratops apart based on their markings or colors as we see here. But Triceratops was probably a very visual animal insofar as its horns and frill and cranial ornaments, like in many horned dinosaurs, the things on their heads changed as they grow up. So as you'll see as you're playing as the Triceratops, as you grow up, the shapes of your horns and your frill will change as you go from a little Triceratops to a big Triceratops. And this might have been, at least in part, for visual communication between Triceratops.
So I'm noticing that on this little guy, the horns kind of point upward toward the sky, and with the adults, they sort of curve forward and downward. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yep, little Triceratops, the horns curve backwards, and then as they get bigger, they go forwards. And then little Triceratops also, you might be able to see, have spikier spikes around the frill at the back of the skull, and then they get kind of flatter as Triceratops grows up. And then also it's been hypothesized that the frill itself gets bigger as Triceratops grows up. So if you take your little Triceratops there and grew it up to the size of a big one and put them next to each other, they would look very different. So they look very different at different growth stages.
Holly, you had an analogy I loved about that with a puppy. You want to share that with us?
Oh yeah. So when dinosaurs were growing up, a lot of times the little ones don't look exactly like the big ones. You imagine like something like a lizard growing up, it looks pretty much the same proportion-wise the whole time. But dinosaurs were probably a lot like you imagine a puppy today, with the big feet and the sort of gangly appearance, sort of awkward. And so there were probably features that they had to grow into, like a puppy has to grow into its big old paws. You could imagine maybe this little baby Triceratops being a bit awkward and klutzy.
Well, I just ran into a tree, so I think Pokey would agree with you.
Speaking of puppies and Triceratops, the way that they're sitting, there's actually kind of a neat bit of research behind that too. There was another paleontologist who played this game who was a little bit puzzled by the fact that we had our Triceratops sit like dogs, which I think is adorable. But Tom actually did that animation, and there was some neat research he did behind it and some neat kind of rationalization, which I think it might be cool to share.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So I did create that animation. It's actually based on a couple of different trackways we have from other ornithischian dinosaurs, which is the larger group that Triceratops belongs to, that shows that they did specifically sit like that, where they sort of sat back on the base of their feet and on their butt with their hands out in front of them, sort of sitting up like a dog sits, it's adorable when our tracks do that.
I'm going down here to get water by myself. We'll see if that turns out to be a good idea.
Probably not a good idea, Rudy.
Yeah, we've got at least one croc over there that will definitely eat me if it gets the... Oh, was I already close?
Oh, yeah, it's easy.
He's after me. Okay, well,
Very
I can
much.
outrun him on land. I'll be fine. Yeah. The adults came down here like they were going to drink water earlier, but then they turned around and went back. So I guess I have to just come down here and do it by myself. And I know that the stream gets a little bit dark at night on YouTube, so I'm going to head back to my parents and sleep, and we'll carry on when it's a little bit lighter and you can see the screen a bit better. Anyone have a number? How many people are watching?
We got 99 right now.
Oh, cool. All right, what's the plan next? What should I... Oh, it's still night. I'll sleep more. Can I not sleep twice back to back? Looks like not.
No, it's like when you wake up in the middle of the night and then you can't fall back asleep
Oh
again.
no!
But you can still explore a little bit around the radius of the nest without the herd getting annoyed with you.
That's true. Yeah, get some of those leaves. There's two. Okay, I guess one thing we haven't, or maybe we briefly touched on this, mentioned is that this game is not complete. It's still in alpha. It's still being developed. So there are some features like other playable dinosaurs that are not here yet, or other growth stages for some of the other dinosaurs. Right now there are 2 playable dinosaurs. Triceratops is one of them. Dakota Raptor is the other, which we may get around to at some point. They are very different to play as, though. One of them's a carnivore, and then Triceratops here is an herbivore, so that by itself is pretty interesting.
Yeah, another thing which I don't know if you've noticed, we tried to reflect a little bit of niche partitioning in our gameplay, and that is just the fact that different animals have different dietary preferences, you know, especially when you talk about herbivores. When you have an ecosystem with so many herbivores coexisting, they kind of have to figure out how they can eat different plants without, you know, eating all each other's plants and causing an imbalance. So we actually tried to reflect that through the gameplay. There are certain types of plants that are more nutritious for Triceratops than others. And
that's really
Tom
cool.
would be better to discuss which ones those are.
Well, if you want, you can
sure.
touch on that, Tom. I think I'm gonna start wandering away from my herd. I'll have less protection, but we'll be able to explore a little bit more and see some of the other critters that are living in this ecosystem.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a couple of studies that have been published. One on the nutritional content of different plants that were around in the time of the dinosaurs, and another on what specific types of herbivore like to eat which specific types of plants. So both of those studies were taken into account when deciding what food your herbivorous labels would be more likely to eat. So as Triceratops, you have a preference for like woody dicots is what they're called, which are like an advanced group of flowering plants that had just appeared in the late Cretaceous. The ceratopsians seem specifically geared towards eating.
Oh, here's some other dinos. As dawn breaks, I think. Well, maybe not quite yet. So these will probably be pretty hard to see on the on YouTube until I get closer, which I am working on right now. And these may look familiar to some of you, particularly those of you who like dinosaurs. They're pretty well known. These are called Pachycephalosaurus. And they have those big bony frills on, or bony like pads on top of their heads, I guess you could say. They're often shown in artwork, sort of headbutting each other. And John, you have a little bit of research on that at Museum of the Rockies, I believe, on headbutting behavior in these Pachycephalosaur dinosaurs. You want to briefly touch on that? Oh, there's a little mammal. Hello.
Sure. There's been a lot of work done on the possibility of headbutting in Pachycephalosaurs because they have these big domes on their heads. So why might they have these big domes on their heads? Maybe they were smashing them into each other, similar to how bighorn sheep do today. So lots of different studies trying to explore was that possible. One line of research has been looking at the inside of the dome, the microstructure of the dome itself. And so it was suggested that they had these kind of radiating structures within the dome that might have been good for impact resistance. But cutting up the domes and looking at pieces of them under the microscope revealed that those radiating structures actually weren't there for very long as the Pachycephalosaur was growing up. They kind of went away. And so they didn't seem to be consistent with shock absorbers for headbutting. So if the domes weren't particularly good for headbutting, it raises the question of, well, then why do they have these big domes on their heads? And again, it could be for some form of visual display or communication with other Pachycephalosaurs. And like Triceratops, their heads also change shape quite a lot as they grow up from little Pachycephalosaurs to big Pachycephalosaurs. A little Pachycephalosaur doesn't have a big dome on its head. It develops as it gets older.
There's another, let's see, what kind of... That's some kind of crocodile.
Why are you approaching the crocodile, Rudy?
I think I can
That's
get away.
actually not a
He has to-
crocodile.
Is that a Champsosaur?
It is a Champsosaur.
Alright. Yeah, I'm still on land. I can run away.
This was something I found really interesting because I had just, the ignoramus I am, I had just assumed that was a crocodile, and it is not in fact a crocodile. It's something that converged with them.
Yeah, so Champsosaurs are really similar to crocodiles, I believe. And those are definitely something that we have found in Makoshika. Actually, all of these critters that we've run into so far, the Triceratops, Pachycephalosaurus, and that Champsosaurus just now that looks kind of like a crocodile, those are all animals that have been discovered in Makoshika State Park. And John, you've done a significant amount of field work there. Holly, have you done any field work in the park?
I've done field work along with the Museum in the Rockies, but none, independently.
Okay, so do you guys want to maybe touch briefly on sort of some of your experiences working in the Hell Creek Formation in Makoshika State Park, and maybe what we might run into in this ecosystem based on what we find in the fossil record there?
Well, I mean, you are a Triceratops, so you can check that off the list. There's lots of Triceratops. There's a spectacularly preserved specimen of Pachycephalosaurus that was found in Makoshika State Park, which is kind of a mid-sized herbivore. So you might run into Pachycephalosaurus at some point. There's Pachycephalosaurs. There's always Tyrannosaurs around. And oceans of turtles and champsosaurs and crocodilians. Edmontosaurus is another not uncommon dinosaur to encounter in Makoshika. So wouldn't be surprised if you run into any of those.
What about mammals? How many mammals do you find out there?
We found some Didelphodon, which is kind of a, puppy-sized mammal that lived along the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period.
They look kind of like possums.
Yeah.
And we saw one of those earlier. It might have been kind of dark to see on the YouTube screen, but there was a little one running sort of in front of the Triceratops. We might be able to encounter another one at some point.
Yeah, they're pretty common. We might run into another one.
When I'm playing Dakota Raptor, they are excellent snacks. Much easier to catch than the really fast lizards or the birds that can just fly away.
Yeah, they like to hide a lot more than running like the lizards do.
Mm-hmm. Man, not much going on in this area. What kind of habitat are we in?
This would be one of the back swamps, I think, because of all the cypresses around you, the bold cypresses.
So one thing that might be cool to note is that you had discussed the shape of the Triceratops frill and horns earlier, and our creature here, Pointy, has actually changed quite a bit since we started streaming in terms of the shape of the skull.
His horns still point upward, so he's certainly not an adult yet, but he's a lot bigger.
You're much bigger than what you'll probably notice. And if you look at the frill, you can now really make out those really pointy spikes around the frill that John was talking about earlier.
Yeah, we'll find some adults again later, and we'll compare it to that, because those little spikes on the outside of the frill, those are pretty flattened on the adult Triceratops.
If you'd like to, you're also ready to advance to Juvenile stage if you'd like.
I figured I would wait till it got dark to do that, so that we can minimize the amount of gameplay while it's dark.
It doesn't advance time if you just advance stages.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here we are.
So you were just asking where you were before. So actually, now that I'm seeing it, I believe you're actually in a piece of Hell Creek that the whole game is based around here. So we based this game not only on the Hell Creek Formation, but on a specific location in South Dakota called Bone Butte, which is a beautiful site, just like full of fossils, which is why we based it on that, because there's tons of plants and tons of animals. And you can also, it's really cool because you can see the shape of the ancient Cretaceous river, like in the rock. So this part of the river that you're approaching now is actually based on, like, directly on the shape of the river from the Cretaceous. You can see like the bones and the pieces of wood and stuff preserved around the edge of what would have been the ancient river. It's really cool. So we based this part of the map directly on that.
So this map itself takes place in South Dakota, but obviously we are kind of talking about this event in terms of Makoshika State Park. So what is the similarity between those two? Makoshika State Park is in eastern Montana, for those of you who haven't been. And if you haven't been, my background when I'm speaking is the park. So that's what it looks like today.
So the animals that we find and the plants that we find in Bone Butte and South Dakota are near identical to what you'd find in the Hell Creek Formation in Montana as well, including Makoshika. Obviously, state borders are a man-made concept, and they did not exist in the Cretaceous. So it was all just one continuous ecosystem at the same animals.
So this would have been one ecosystem or a series of interconnected ecosystems that stretched across those arbitrary state lines. And then as rocks were being deposited, when those animals, some of them, very rarely when they died, their bones were preserved, like John was saying at the very beginning of this, in those rock layers that were being created. And so we got very similar rocks and very similar fossils in those two places at the same time. It's pretty empty out here. Oh, there's some more. Where you going, Ruby? I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to check some things out, see what I can find. There's some more Edmontosaurus over here.
You didn't look both ways before you started.
No, I didn't. I probably got eaten there.
You are turning into a hefty trike, though. At a certain point, the crocs will stop bothering you.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a pro tip when you're playing Saurian. Is always look both ways before you cross the river.
Definitely.
Or you're likely to get nabbed.
That's like the rule number one if you ever play this game. And honestly, just in general, if you're playing Dakota Raptor, even at an adult growth stage, there are still plenty of things that will bother you if you get too close. So it's important to kind of be aware of what's going on. Whereas this guy, once he gets big enough, I think he'll be safe from most things.
Yeah, although as you get bigger, the other herbivores will start to consider you more of a nuisance or a threat if you get too close to them.
Really?
So there is a limit, yeah. I mean, they won't care if you're a baby. Like, there's no reason the gigantic animal's going to care if you're a baby. But if you're a big Triceratops and you're coming too close to them, they might not like it.
They're definitely keeping more of an eye on me now.
It's like they are keeping watch on you, yeah.
Interesting. See what's on top of this little plateau? Or is that the edge of the map?
No, it's not.
Let's see if I can get up there. Might be a little bit
It
steep.
could just be a big going at the top of this plateau. I know this map like the back of my hand now, partly because I designed it.
Oh yeah, okay, I know where we are. Alright. I'll wait a little bit while it starts to get dark here, and then I'll sleep and minimize the amount of nighttime play. Even though different animals come out at night, so we'll be losing. Hopefully, we'll still see some Dakota Raptors at some point.
The nocturnal spawn sensitivity actually isn't in yet. That'll be coming soon. But
gotcha.
Right now, it's
Yeah, that's something we're gonna add in the future, but it's not there yet.
What is
one
this
animal
thing?
which we're actually planning to put in alongside that is Pectinodon. That's one of the things we wanted to do first, make sure that there's nocturnal spawning so that we can make that clear about Pectinodon.
And what is Pectinodon? Is that a mammal?
Pectinodon is a troodontid dinosaur.
So like a raptor relative.
Yes, that's right. Sort of a leggier raptor type thing that focuses more on small prey.
This is
appears to be nocturnal.
Here's a familiar animal to many of you watching, I would guess. What's this?
So this is a turtle called Basilames. It's hard to tell because you're a big Triceratops, so your sense of scale is a bit off.
Mm-hmm.
But the shell of Basilames is like a meter long, so it's a very big turtle, a very big terrestrial turtle, so sort of a tortoise ecomorph. But it looks pretty piddly compared to these big dinosaurs.
Yeah, I have had the privilege to help excavate some Basilames material, and yeah, that was quite an experience. John was there for that; he knows.
Yep, it's a big turtle.
We named that one Tangerine Turtle because of what the person who found it was eating for lunch. kind of fun. A lot of paleontologists will kind of give nicknames to their specimens when they find them. So if you find a specimen, you get to kind of be creative with the naming. And that's naming the specimen, not the species. So you might have, like the Tyrannosaurus rex at the Field Museum in Chicago is named Sue. That's the specimen name, not the species name. Ooh, what do we have down here? Is that an adult Dakota Raptor? Maybe I shouldn't get too close.
Don't, Rudy.
You'll probably be fine.
It might be a Raptor. I might be okay. It doesn't look as big as an adult Dakota Raptor. Also, it's in the water, so I can probably outrun it.
Someone
that's
in
an
chat
Akira Raptor.
asked.
Yeah, a Raptor. So
Yeah,
that's the
Juvenile.
littler of the two Hell Creek Raptors, we think.
Are you chasing it, Rudy? What are
Someone
you
in the chat
Yeah, I'll leave it
Marine.
alone now. Now that I know what it is.
Harassing that poor bird.
For friends.
Weren't able to get close enough to see the feathers. Oh, there's some more Pachy's. I'm surprised we haven't seen any ornithomimids yet. Oh, wow. That was excellent timing. Right there. Look at them. So these are pretty common in this game.
Yeah, these are, I guess, kind of interesting in the sense these are one of the animals that doesn't actually have a species name in the game currently.
You can see a fish.
Yes,
next to it.
that's right.
Why is that?
The specimens we have, so they're actually not that uncommon. They're actually very common at Bone Butte, but they just haven't been described properly yet. They've been described in passing over the years, and they've been assigned to sometimes to Ornithomimus and sometimes to Struthiomimus, but it's not actually clear what they are, and they're probably something different, their own thing entirely.
So ornithomimid, that's
But
a
they
reference
haven't
to any animal that is in the Ornithomimidae family, is my guess?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
If you're a more casual dinosaur fan, you would know Gallimimus, most likely. It's the most famous ornithomimid.
Oh, that one's mad at me.
You did just wander into the middle of their group while they were busy with something.
These guys are covered in feathers.
Oh, he's mad at you.
Yeah, he is. I think I accidentally... He doesn't seem to be able to hurt me, though. That's the amusing thing. Like, I have not taken any damage from him.
He'll peck you to death.
You might have a hard time getting through your armor.
Yeah. So... That's kind of amusing. They have a lot of feathers. And that gives us an opportunity to kind of talk about feathers in dinosaurs. We haven't seen... the Akira Raptor had feathers. We didn't see it up close. There are a lot of dinosaurs now we now know that had feathers. Holly, do you want to tell us a little bit about what feathers in dinosaurs mean?
Oh, sure. So, we think of animals today that have some kind of covering on their bodies as warm-blooded animals because they need this covering for insulation. And because we find feathers in dinosaurs, that's some pretty good evidence that they were probably producing their own body heat. Because especially when you're small, you need to be able to maintain that body heat, and some kind of insulation like feathers or fur helps you keep warm. Whereas something like a lizard that is just the body temperature of the surrounding environment doesn't really need any insulation. So feathers would be a good source of insulation for something that was warm-blooded.
So the Triceratops here does not have feathers. Does that mean it was cold-blooded, or what do we think about dinosaurs being warm or cold-blooded? I know in the past they were always kind of thought of as being cold-blooded.
Once you get to a certain size, even if you are warm-blooded, you're producing more body heat than you really need. So once you get large enough, you don't really need that insulation, and it becomes more for display or to signal to rivals or within the population. It's likely that dinosaurs, when they hatched, had some kind of covering, at least for a little bit of time, just because we think that they are warm-blooded, or that they were, based on bone tissue appearances. Their bone tissue looks like something from today that we know that are warm-blooded. So when they hatch, they probably had some kind of covering, but if you got as big as Pokey here, you wouldn't need that kind of insulation, except for something like display.
Mm-hmm. The music keeps changing, and I think a predator is after me, but it's just this very agitated ornithomimid. I'm pretty sure I either stepped on him or accidentally poked him with my horns earlier, and now he's just not letting it go. Not very forgiving.
It doesn't like you hanging out with his buddies. He don't trust you.
Yeah, he's jealous. I'm taking all his friends. All right, well, I'll let you have your family here.
I've had similar experiences with geese.
That's true. Geese are vicious.
While we're on feathers, I think to point out that we're not just assuming they had feathers. It's not just conjecture. We have hundreds of specimens now of dinosaurs from the Mesozoic with feathers just preserved directly on them. Mostly from these beautiful rocks in China and also Germany. But for ornithomimids specifically, we actually have some out of Canada recently that have, for just a few million years before Hell Creek, that have feathers preserved all across the body on ornithomimids. So our ornithomimids are based specifically on those specimens. And those specimens show that they had sort of loose, fluffy type feathers over their bodies, like an emu, but with their naked skin it's like an ostrich, which is cool. We know so much about its skin covering.
Yeah, skin is really interesting in dinosaurs, both in terms of color and in terms of texture. And it's honestly it's incredible to look at some of the discoveries that have been going on in things like coloration in some really well preserved skin fossils. Holly or John, do you want to maybe talk about that briefly? Kind of how we might be able to tell color. I don't think we have any evidence of color in Hell Creek dinosaurs. Certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but in a dinosaur where we did have an idea of color, how would we know that?
Oh, John's leaning back, so I don't guess anyone. Well, I'm not a molecular paleontologist, but my general understanding is that in some outstandingly well-preserved specimens, like some of the animals from China, for example, the preservation of keratin, so what the feathers and the beaks are made of, can sometimes be so well preserved that you can do some chemical analyses to access the melanosomes within the keratin of the feathers or the beaks.
What are melanosomes? Oh, you were about to say that.
Yep. So the melanosomes are what gives a structure its color, and you can take a look at the density of those melanosomes and compare them to what you see for colors in animals today and get a general idea of what kind of colors dinosaurs could have had. And some of the coloring preserves better than others. So some of the best preserved melanosomes tend to be oranges and blacks and the iridescent black-blue colors. And then sometimes the preservation on dinosaurs is so nice that you can actually see color. So there's a Pachycephalosaurus, a little tiny like ceratopsid type dinosaur that was preserved from China with you can actually see yellows and blacks on the skin impressions, which is just amazing.
Man, now I managed to make two of them mad.
You really are not friends with
No, clearly they're just not having it. I'll go find some other friends. Man, tough welcome. Maybe I'll find a T-Rex and he'll be friends.
No, Rudy.
Oh, hey, maybe that croc will want to be friends. That looks like another Champsosaurus. Yep.
I don't think it likes you. Sorry.
No, doesn't look like it.
No, it doesn't look like it. You seem to run into Champsosaurs a lot, considering the crocs are very common, but yeah, you keep running into Champsosaurs.
Are they, I know, well, actually, I don't know this. My sort of understanding was that Champsosaurs ate more fish, and some of these other crocs might have been more likely to attack a little dinosaur, but maybe they were all eating fish, or I'm not really sure, actually. Do any of you know more about that?
Yeah, so there is definitely seemingly some niche partitioning, which is what we call when different animals in the same environment specialize in different food types, in the Hell Creek crocodilians and the Champsosaur. So the Champsosaurs definitely, as you said, are focused more on eating fish. They've got those long, thin snouts like a gharial. There's another crocodilian from Hell Creek that's not in the game yet called Thoracosaurus, which is also gharial-like and probably fed on fish. But of the two crocodiles, there's one called Borealisuchus, the northern crocodile, which seems more, its teeth are more designed to feed on prey animals, so it probably did like wait at the edge of the water and jump out and grab dinosaurs like a Nile crocodile grabbed wildebeest. Whereas the other one, Brachychampsa, which is related to alligators, it has these like blunt, flat teeth at the back of its mouth for crushing, and it probably ate like shellfish and crushed turtle shells and things like that. So yeah, the different crocs and croc-type animals or croc-looking animals were focused on different prey items, and that's how they were all able to live together, all four of them.
So they weren't sharing the exact same food resources, in other words.
Yeah,
They kind of
that's
each
right.
had. So sometimes there are
Yeah,
T-Rexes.
Champsosaurus and Thoracosaurus were both eating fish,
Ooh,
but I would assume Thoracosaurus was probably going after bigger fish than Champsosaurus were.
right.
Looks like you found a rare one.
Yeah, maybe I found a friend this time. Yeah, I was not expecting to run into... Is this Denversaurus again?
Looks like it.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
these
think
guys
so.
are not common. We're fairly lucky, I think, to see one.
Yep, pretty lucky.
So these are, if you've seen art of these guys or seen them in books, you might see, oh, there's another friend.
Uh-oh.
See that one up
Yeah.
So this is an ankylosaur. That's the group of dinosaurs it belongs to, and this particular type of ankylosaur is Denversaurus. And yeah, they're pretty rare both in this game and in the fossil record. And I mean, I think that's related. I think they're rare in the game because they're rare in the fossil record. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Though, is that another one over in the distance there?
Another Denversaurus?
Not that way. Yeah, I thought I saw another one. It's the other way behind you. It doesn't matter. There's a T-Rex over there. So
Yeah, we'll go
worry
check
about
him
it.
T-Rex just ignored a whole flock of ornithomimids.
He
though,
might
so
not be
it probably
hungry.
Isn't hungry. Yeah, you might be able to get a good look at it.
Well, we're going to save first.
Good idea.
All right, I think that works.
You can just press escape.
Yep. Okay, let's see if he's hungry. But yeah, he wasn't going after those ornithomimids, so maybe not. This might be pretty cool, actually.
I think you lucked out.
If you saw the stream or the
Okay.
trailer from our practice stream, the T-Rex we ran into was definitely hungry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just
that's
responding to
terrifying.
chat. I believe Denversaurus is named after the Denver Museum of Natural History, not after the Denver Basin. I could be wrong, but I think that's right, if I remember correctly.
I think I got lucky. I think he would already be going after me if he was hungry. Oh, well,
Yeah, it definitely saw you, so I think you're cool. If if you want to get a
Wow.
good look at this guy.
Yeah. So he's got some feathers. What do we know about feathers in Tyrannosaurs like T-Rex?
So it's complicated. We know of Tyrannosaurs are a very big group that was around from the Jurassic right until the end of the Cretaceous, where we are here. We know of two species from the early Cretaceous, Dylon, which is very small, and Eutyrannus, which is very big. And both of those were covered head to toe in, again, simple emu-like feathers, like the one of the marmots have. But the more advanced group of Tyrannosaurs in the late Cretaceous, the Tyrannosaurids, which is the group that T-Rex belongs to directly, we have a bunch of skin impressions from them that all show very, very, very small scales, like you see on the feet of some birds, like really tiny, like a couple of millimeters across each. But we have impressions of those scales from every part of the body. So there's some from the tail, the hip, the neck, the underside. So it seems like most of the body was covered in scales, in tiny scales. Now it's possible that feathers grew elsewhere on the body or in between the scales. I still think it's fairly likely that was possible. But it's also possible that they lost their feathers secondarily, evolutionarily, probably because of their large size. As Holly was talking about a bit earlier, once an animal gets really big, it becomes more of a detriment than a plus to have a body covered in insulation.
So while we're kind of following this guy and we're on the topic of T-Rex, T-Rex is one of the playable dinosaurs that will be in the finished version of this game, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So part of that, for Dakota Raptor and Triceratops, you're currently two playable dinosaurs. You've got these different growth stages, and you start out as a hatchling and you have to grow up to an adult. So you'll have to put growth stages in for T-Rex at some point as well, I'm guessing.
That's right.
Yep.
And that is interesting because it brings up a debate that has been fairly notable in the scientific community about Tyrannosaurus rex and this other Hell Creek tyrannosaur called Nanotyrannus, and that you have studied that sort of debate or question in science, Holly. So I will let you take it away.
Oh, sure, yeah. He's definitely not hungry, huh?
No, definitely not.
But he is slowly getting hungry. So you're basically
Yes.
just a buffet walking alongside him until whenever he gets hungry.
He's pretending to be friends with me right now.
Yeah, so Nanotyrannus is basically a small or pygmy version of T-Rex would have lived in the same area and at the same time as T-Rex, and it's got long legs, a long narrow snout.
He's hungry now.
Yeah, that way.
Hungry.
Oh no, I went in the wrong way.
Yeah.
The Triceratops turns a little slower than I'm used to playing as the Dakota Raptor for sure. Or are we getting a view of?
Yeah, you have to select your save. You did want to touch the stove.
Yeah, I was asking for that. I was hoping maybe he would wait to become hungry until Holly finished talking about Nanotyrannus, but clearly he did not want to cooperate.
So yeah, with Nanotyrannus, these specimens are smaller, and so they were named Nanotyrannus just because it's smaller than a T-Rex. And over the years, scientists have re-examined Nanotyrannus and looked at the bone structure, so like the skull of Nanotyrannus, and compared it to T-Rex. And the similarities are such that that it looks like to these scientists it was probably just not a Nanotyrannus, but actually just a juvenile T-Rex going through the changes you expect in ontogeny. So like with the Triceratops, you know, the horns are swept back and then they start getting more forward pointing. T-Rex just got bigger and bulkier as it grew up. And so the bone shape changes are what you would expect for a juvenile growing into something much larger and bulkier. And so I studied that question looking at the bone tissue of Nanotyrannus and T-Rex, and the Nanotyrannus specimens were all juveniles based on their bone tissue organization, and of course all the T-Rex were adults. So it seems to be that Nanotyrannus isn't actually an actual dinosaur, it's just a juvenile T-Rex.
And that's something that's been talked about for, I mean, Nanotyrannus was named a while ago, so this has been a question in the scientific community for, I think, decades, right?
Not necessarily a question, because the information from all the morphology from the skull and the skeletons are pretty convincing and conclusive that Nanotyrannus is a juvenile. It's just that some vocal minority have been pushing the idea that Nanotyrannus is an actual taxon, but this histology work, or looking at the bone tissue, was important because it approaches the question from a different angle, and because my group came to the same conclusion as the group studying the morphology or the bone changes, that's even more evidence that Nanotyrannus is just a juvenile T-Rex.
Pretty cool. So the what would, when Henry and Tom get around to putting in the earlier growth stages of T-Rex, what would they be thinking about? What might they make the younger T-Rex look like based on what these juvenile T-Rex that you've studied look like?
Well, we've got some really excellent examples of juvenile T-Rex from the LA County Museum. So they've got a small little guy. And then there are a couple of half-grown T-Rex at the Burpee Museum of Natural History, and based on those specimens, you know, the juvenile T-Rex, kind of like the puppy analogy, they've got longer, ganglier legs. They're kind of going through their awkward phase. The head is narrower. The teeth are a bit less bulky and more knife-like. So it suggests that the juvenile T-Rex were probably more agile, might have actually eaten different prey items than the adult T-Rex. And because T-Rex could live into its 30s, it was probably really important that the juvenile T-Rex were not competing for the same food as the adult T-Rex were. So it makes a lot of sense that they would be eating different things as they're getting bigger.
And that was an important thing for us as well. I think now, without the juvenile T-Rexes in there, it feels like there's a bit of a gap in the ecosystem, like between Dakota Raptor and T-Rex, where you need sort of a mid-sized carnivore there, and that's the niche that juvenile T-Rexes would have filled.
I was going to ask about that, yeah, because when I've played this game, generally there's nothing. You know, once you're too big for an adult Dakota Raptor to mess with you, the only thing you have to worry about is an adult T-Rex, and you might not even be big enough for it to bother with. So it's kind of there. It'll be really interesting to see how this game kind of changes as you add those T-Rex growth stages. I think that'll actually be a really cool change to the way gameplay works.
Absolutely. I mean, it works fantastically from a gameplay standpoint, that a T-Rex in its life cycle basically travels through every carnivorous ecological niche that we have in the game. You know, it starts out around the size of an Acaroraptor, and then by the end of its life, it's a gigantic thing in a completely different niche.
And that's why T-Rex is so awesome. I mean, it basically just monopolized all of the carnivore niches from, you know, bigger than Dakota Raptor on up. And, you know, if you looked at the Morrison Formation and you think of all the different carnivores there, Allosaurus and Torvosaurus and Ceratosaurus, you've got all of these differently sized carnivores, but in the Hell Creek Formation, it was just T-Rex, because like I said, it took 30 years to get to, skeletal maturity. So you're going through these different size changes as you're getting older, and you didn't need anything else. T-Rex was eating everything pretty much.
So we've shifted away from Triceratops. I thought getting killed by our good T-Rex buddy was a good time to maybe try Dakota Raptor. And you guys probably noticed I named this one Clever Girl. So there's our Jurassic Park reference for the day. Or I think our second one or third one possibly. Is it true that you can glide in this game as a baby Dakota Raptor? If you take off from a tree?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
So you're going to want to jump off the tree and hold space, but I would caution that your effectiveness in gliding increases proportionally to the wing size of the raptor. So you're currently a hatchling still, and your wings aren't very big. Your peak gliding ability is going to be when you're a juvenile.
So I'll be able to glide a little, but not very well?
Yeah, that's when kind of the ratio of your mass to the size of your wings is at the optimal point for I guess gliding isn't the right word, especially since in video games that kind of has a different connotation. We've used various euphemisms to discuss it. I think the one we commonly use is falling with style.
I was going to say, sounds like a good moment for Toy Story. Let's see. So this is, playing a carnivore is very different. I'm a lot more concerned with food. You're walking around as a Triceratops and there's plants, and you've got to keep eating the plants, but they're always there. Whereas with a carnivore like Dakota Raptor, you really have to be constantly looking for options. And I can see these ornithomimids, but they will slaughter me if I try to go after them. So, or just ignore me. I'm not sure which. Maybe I can go fishing. Is that a gar?
Like a gar, yeah.
Yeah.
See if I can. Come back! No, come back! He's just enough faster that I can't. Oh man, I thought that would work. I've done it as an adult Dakota Raptor, but all right. Well, other options. I really like the sniff mechanic that you guys have put in the game to kind of highlights potential prey items. So it looks like it's not highlighting. Yeah, it'll show the green is where herbivores have been, I believe. And then if there's a little thing that I can eat, it'll sort of highlight it. So do you guys want to talk a bit about feathers in raptor dinosaurs, maybe? Maybe Holly, you can start with feathers or John, feathers in raptor dinosaurs, and then I don't know if anyone knows about like behavior for like climbing in Dakota Raptor, or if that was mostly inference. I'd love to know more about that.
Well, there's direct evidence for feathers in some raptors, like in Dakota Raptor. There weren't feathers preserved with it, but there's bumps on one of the arm bones called quill knobs that are points where feathers would attach. And the same thing is seen in Velociraptor. So there's direct evidence of feathers being on raptors. And often you'll see other raptors kind of portrayed with feathers as well, because their close relatives are known to be feathered. So like Deinonychus, for example, is often shown to have feathers on it, which it probably did based on the fact that many of its close relatives were feathered.
What about climbing? It seems like it would be a tricky one to figure out from fossils.
And there's still, I mean, I don't follow the debate, but there's always the ground up versus tree down arguments for how mapping flight actually evolved. I think ground up it's got more evidence to support it now than tree down, but
and that's the idea that the first the dinosaurs that were ancestral to the first birds were kind of running around on the ground rather than living in trees, and that they developed flight from a ground dwelling lifestyle.
Right.
Birds would have there are birds in this game though. Actually, this might be interesting to talk about. One question I get sometimes is how are there birds living at the same time as dinosaurs if birds evolved from dinosaurs? Does one of you want to tackle that?
Well, birds just are a type of dinosaur. So it's not, yeah, it's not like there were dinosaurs and then there were birds. In the Mesozoic, the time of the dinosaurs, there was a whole bunch of dinosaurs, all these different groups of dinosaurs. Birds were one of those groups, and they actually appear in the Jurassic, so very far back. And they're just one of the many groups of dinosaurs that are around. And then, of course, the mass extinction happens at the end of the Cretaceous. It wipes out most of the groups of dinosaurs, except for one, which are the birds we have now. Actually, it looks like at the moment 3 groups survived, which are the like ostrich, emu, cassowary group, the like duck and chicken group, and then another group that includes all other birds. Like those 3. So it's more think of it like those 3 groups are the only groups of dinosaur that survived the mass extinction.
Any advice on where I might look for food here?
Well, Didelphodons often like to hide in plants, so that's a place to sniff them out. But
If you run along the shoreline of the river, you can look for birds, and lizard's the easiest spot on the sand. It's what I often do.
Oh, I think that might be a Didelphodon up there. It's very far away. It might be hard to see on the stream, but we will find out. So Didelphodon, we mentioned it before. That's a little possum-like mammal that was running around at this time.
so some people in the comments are bringing up something which is pretty interesting, which is, whether or not Dakota Raptor is actually different than a Caroraptor. And
Yeah.
I think the short answer to that is, well, one, we're sticking with Dakota Raptor because there's published literature on it and nothing published saying that it isn't real, or the same as a Caroraptor. But the more correct answer is that we don't know. There's still a lot of uncertainty around this.
Yeah, there's no overlap in the fossil material for Echiraptor and Dakota Raptor. Like Echiraptor is known from an upper jaw and a lower jaw, and Dakota Raptor is known from some limb bones and some vertebrae, but no upper jaw, lower jaw. So, and what we know of Echiraptor is basically potentially one individual, so we don't know anything really about how it might have changed as it grew. So could it be that as Echiraptor got bigger, it became what is called Dakota Raptor? It's an interesting possibility.
And yeah, it's something that we've had to grapple with. It's been interesting. We've had to really grapple with scientific uncertainty as developers in a different way than you might otherwise, because we had to make the choice. Do we keep Dakota Raptor if it's not real? And the decision we made is yes, because at the time that was our understanding, and this is kind of what science is about. Science, especially when it comes to prehistoric animals that we have very fragmentary knowledge about, is constantly changing. And we know that this game, while it's accurate to the best of our knowledge right now, in 10, 20 years, there will be things that we know are not true about this game. And that's just kind of something that we come to terms with. And rather than thinking of that as, a sad thing or like we failed, I think that's really just us understanding, what science is about, which is about constantly changing your understanding of these things.
I think that's really important to recognize, because I think there's sometimes an understanding of science as something that is constantly changing its mind, and that, well, if it's always going to be changing its mind, how do you ever trust it? And I think that's it's really important to kind of recognize science as an exploration for truth, and kind of getting closer and closer, circling closer and closer around the truth. Do one of you scientists want to chime in on that?
I agree, Rudy. That's true, because science is, we're using the available data to try to find out what's actually true. What were these animals really like? What were they doing? And it's very likely that there's still, certainly there's still a lot to be learned. There's many discoveries that haven't been made now, which in 50 years or 100 years from now will be, would change possibly everything we know about the Hell Creek ecosystem, or would certainly impact our view of things. There's exciting things that have yet to be discovered. Like, for example, in the game, you start out as a tiny little Triceratops, but that's about the smallest known Triceratops that we know of so far. Its head is about yay big. But what was Triceratops like before that growth stage? We don't really know. Same for Tyrannosaurus rex. And these are two of the most famous dinosaurs that have ever been discovered, and we know very little about them when they were very, very young. And so it's a constant process of exploring and making new discoveries and trying to find out what was actually true about what the world was like in the past. So it's good to be able to change the way things are viewed, because science is not about being right or sticking to what you think because you think it very strongly and you don't want to be wrong. If other information comes along that falsifies your hypothesis, then you have to discard the hypothesis and go with what is supported by the evidence and what is more likely to be true.
And that's something that I've heard you say several times. I can remember one particular. So for those listening, John and I have done some field work together, and actually I've done a little bit of field work with Holly too, which is how I know both of them. But one of John's hypotheses is that the dinosaurs Torosaurus and Triceratops might be two different growth stages of the same dinosaur. And I once asked John what he would most like to find, or what one of the things he would most like to find in the Hell Creek would be in terms of fossils, and he said a baby Torosaurus, not because, because even if it proves his hypothesis wrong, it still helps indicate, it helps illuminate the truth, and that's the important part, or something that's closer to the truth at any rate. Tom, you had a very nice analogy for science that we talked about last time. Do you want to share that with people?
Sure, yeah. So I think it's a bit wrong to state that science flip-flops back and forth or can't make up its mind. So the analogy that I prefer to use is it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, but you're trying to work out what the rest of the picture looks like from each of the pieces that you put in. So every time you put a piece in, you make an inference about what the rest of the picture is going to look like from that piece. But as you get more pieces and add them together, the picture becomes clearer. Why it seems like things are changing is because the picture is getting more clear. So we get closer to the truth, the further it just jumps back and forth all over the place between radically.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's I think that's probably one of the more fitting analogies that I've come across for science. We've got a lot going on here. So there's a crocodile chasing me. There's a herd of ornithomimids. There's a Pachycephalosaur, and there was a T-Rex here earlier that either wasn't hungry or just scared everyone off.
It was very dramatic going on there while Tom was giving his analogy, yeah.
Perhaps fitting as some of the different characters we've encountered in the game come together like pieces in a puzzle.
There you go.
And trying to die by Rex again.
So kind of going off of that analogy of science as a jigsaw puzzle, how do we acquire new puzzle pieces, John and Holly? How does that work in science? How do we, especially in paleontology, how do we learn more about these extinct ecosystems so that we can create art like this game?
Well, I mean, a big part of it would be field work, going out into the field and making new discoveries. Places like Makoshika State Park or other areas in the Hell Creek Formation where new fossils might be found that could inform us more about what the world was like back then. Like, for example, a Raptor was just discovered just a few years ago. Before that, it was unknown, and I'm sure there'll be other new discoveries in the future that will fill in blanks in what we know. So certainly a big part in paleontology is actually going out into the field and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, and in addition to that, thinking about ways we can use different scientific fields and different technologies to apply to paleontology. So paleontology doesn't really work well in a vacuum. We have to think about ways to incorporate other fields of study. So biology, physics, even medicine and statistics. All of these different fields can come together and help us learn more about dinosaurs. A good example is with what I do, bone histology. Of course, we use that to take a look at modern animal bone and human bone to assess, healthy bone versus maybe cancerous or osteoporotic bone. Another great example is the CT scanner. Of course, that was developed for medical technology to take a look inside the body, but we can use that to take a look at, for example, fossils that are encased in rock that are just too fragile to break out. We can actually see the fossil in 3 dimensions, so we can look inside rock and fossil in that way. So just using technology and also different approaches, like understanding ecology, for example, and using these different fields, these different approaches can help us learn more about dinosaurs in the long run, as far as, ecosystems that are long gone. So that is really important, and just being able to collaborate and being willing to bring in other groups, other scientists into the mix is really important.
So, John, you mentioned one sort of. First of all, that was a really neat summary. The way you guys kind of did that, John. You talked a little bit about fieldwork, Holly. Then you talked about the methods we use to kind of understand these things. I want to go back to fieldwork a little bit and talk about kind of particularly fossils on public lands. I guess first off, I'll just say that collecting fossils without permit on public lands like Makoshika State Park is prohibited. There are some kinds of public lands actually where you can. For example, BLM land, most BLM land, you can collect like invertebrate seashells and things, but it's important to know those rules before you go out and collect fossils. Could I have one or both of you kind of talk about why that is for a little bit? Then we'll get ready to call it good for the day, I think.
Well, one reason is, for example, if you're in the park and you find a fossil poking out of the ground and you were to pick it up without a permit and just to show someone else, by doing that, it's possible to lose the locality itself. So if a dinosaur is coming out of the ground, there might be just a little bit poking out or little bits and fragments coming out. And if you remove those clues at the surface, it might make it difficult or impossible to relocate where the rest of the animal is in the ground, because often we just find little shards and bits at first, and you don't really know what's in the hillside until you start excavating or digging into the ground, and you need to be quite extensive in some cases to see what's really in there. But usually it's just those first glimpses of this might be an area where there's something further to look into, and that could easily be lost if it's picked up or moved or transported.
And to me, as someone who has worked at Makoshika State Park before, I think another sort of piece of that to me is that fossils from public land are belong to the public. So the Makoshika State Park, that's state land. The fossils there belong to the people of Montana. And so if one person just kind of shows up and picks up fossils and takes them home, they're kind of taking those away from the people of Montana. And the way we can kind of keep those in an environment where the people of Montana can share and enjoy them and learn from them and be inspired by them, that's kind of what museums do. So these fossils, they're very fragile, and when you dig them up, they need to be properly cared for. And so there's places like the Museum of the Rockies, where John works, that are called repositories, and that's where fossils go to be cared for, and to be accessible for to the public. So a museum is a place where you can go and you can see fossils from your public lands, and you can learn about them and kind of engage with them that way, that you wouldn't be able to necessarily do that if people were just taking them home and putting them on a bookshelf. So that's another really big piece of the kind of importance of leaving fossils on public lands where they are. Notify, if you find a fossil in a place like Makoshika State Park, by all means let the park know. But please do not pick that up and take it home. That can hurt scientific research, and it can just hurt the public in general as well.
All right, everything we know about dinosaurs and like for this game, for example, is all from scientific research. And because science relies on being able to test each other's research and the conclusions, we have to use specimens that are in the public trust. And so scientists can't publish on specimens that are in private collections because the person that owns that fossil can decide who gets to see it. Whereas if the fossil is in a repository like the Museum of the Rockies, then it's not just the public, but scientists as well that can see these specimens, and we can check each other, we can test each other's conclusions and decide whether or not those hypotheses are strong or rejected. And that's something that we have to be able to do to push science forward. We have to be able to keep looking at those specimens.
Yeah, that's a good summary. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it sometimes that isn't always easy to see on the surface. Anyway, we are getting close to the time. Here's a herd of Triceratops. I've just been kind of running around and seeing all kinds of stuff here at the last second.
Leave those Triceratops alone, Rudy.
All right. I won't try to attack any of the young ones I see over there. I think they'd beat me anyway. I'm still pretty small. So on that note, Tom, could you tell us maybe one more time kind of what this game represents, what it is? And we want to state this is an educational event, so my institution that I'm going to grad school at, the institutions that Holly and John work at, and the state government of Montana, they're not officially endorsing Saurian. That's not what this is. We're using the video game as an educational experience. That said, if you are interested in this game and you would like to check it out for yourself, Tom, where could people find it?
So if you're interested in picking up Saurian, the early access version of the game that Rudy's playing right now is out on Steam. You can just search Saurian on Steam. You can follow us on Twitter at Saurian Game. You can also follow me on Twitter at Tomosaurus, Tomozaurus. And there you'll find a link to our book, which we've also made. I wrote this book. It has information on science behind the game and lots of beautiful artwork from our artists. That is being published in hardcover by Titan Books. I believe it comes out next month. So you can find a link to that on my Twitter page while searching Saurian Field Guide to Hell Creek.
All right, thank you. So with that, I want to extend a thank you for all of you for joining me, and in the audience, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being patient with us. Sorry about the technical difficulties. But yeah, this has been Through the Eyes of a Dinosaur. I'm Rudy Hummel. I'm a grad student. And then we have had Dr. John Scannella, Dr. Holly Woodward, and then game developers Tom Parker and Henry Meyers. Thanks again for joining us. We'll leave you with this beautiful twilight in the Hell Creek ecosystem of the Dakotas in Montana 66 million years ago. Thanks for joining us.